Some stories don't begin with screams. They begin with silence so deep it makes you aware of your own breathing. What I'm about to tell you is not a legend, not a rumor, and not something I heard secondhand. This happened to me. And even now, years later, I still hesitate before walking past empty places. Before you go any further, if you want real, slow-burning, psychologically disturbing horror stories like this one, subscribe to this channel right now. Like this video. Share it with someone who believes fear only exists on a screen. And in the comments, tell me which city and country you're watching from, and what time it is for you right now. Because when this began, I didn't know time could feel wrong. In the year 2004, my wife Maribel and I moved to the outer edge of a quiet American town that hadn't yet decided whether it wanted to grow or decay. The houses were spaced too far apart, the roads unfinished, the street lights unreliable. It was the kind of place developers abandoned halfway through their plans, leaving behind a strange mix of new structures and neglected land. I liked it for the quiet. Maribel liked it because it felt untouched. She was expecting our first child, and we wanted distance from noise, from crowds, from everything that made life feel rushed. Our house sat near the end of a long road where pavement gave way to dirt. Behind us stretched an open lot filled with wild grass and uneven ground. At the far edge of that land stood an abandoned residence, large, old, and visibly avoided. Its windows were sealed, its paint eaten away by time. Near it stood a massive tree, its branches heavy and low, as if gravity favored it more than the rest of the world. No one talked about that place, and that should have told me something. Maribel believed walking helped her sleep. Every evening after dinner, we'd step outside and follow the road until the lights thinned and the air felt cooler. She walked slowly, one hand always resting on her stomach, the other brushing against mine. That night felt different. Not dramatic, not threatening, just heavier. The air pressed down slightly, as if sound itself struggled to move. We spoke less. Our footsteps seemed louder than usual. As we approached the open lot, Maribel slowed without realizing it. Her attention drifted toward the abandoned property. She didn't stare directly at it, not at first. She looked everywhere else, at the ground, the sky, the trees, like she was avoiding eye contact with something impolite. When we passed near the large tree at the boundary, its branches sagged overhead, casting uneven shadows across the dirt road. Maribel paused beneath them, just for a moment. "I don't like this spot," she said quietly. I asked why. She shook her head. "I don't know," she replied. "It feels occupied. We didn't hear a sound. We didn't see movement. Nothing followed us home. That's the part people misunderstand when I tell this story. They expect an instant sign, something obvious enough to justify fear. But fear doesn't announce itself. It waits until you relax." The rest of the evening passed normally. Maribel ate, smiled, even joked about how protective I'd become. She went to bed early, exhaustion pulling her under faster than usual. I stayed awake longer, listening to the house settle. Pipes creaked. The wind moved through the empty lot behind us. At some point, I noticed Maribel had stopped turning in her sleep. She lay perfectly still, not tense, not rigid. Still in a way that suggested listening. The change didn't come all at once. It crept in through small absences. Maribel stopped humming while she cooked. She stopped commenting on television shows. Sometimes I'd speak to her and realize she hadn't heard me at all. Not because she was distracted, but because she was somewhere else entirely. She began sitting near the back window in the evenings, staring toward the open land. Her expression wasn't fearful. It was thoughtful, almost patient. When I asked what she was thinking about, she answered honestly. "Nothing," she said. But nothing doesn't hold your attention like that. At night, she grew restless. She'd wake suddenly, breath shallow, one hand gripping the mattress as if grounding herself. She told me she felt weight pressing down, not on her body, but on the space around her, as if the room itself was leaning inward. I told myself this was normal. I needed it to be normal. Maribel started talking in her sleep. At first, it was harmless. Half-formed words, unfinished thoughts. But soon, patterns emerged. She spoke softly, carefully, as though responding to someone who didn't need explanations. Sometimes she'd pause, listening, then answer again. One night, she said my name, but the tone was wrong. Not affectionate, not annoyed, curious, like someone testing a sound they'd just learned. I asked her about it the next morning. She laughed and said she hadn't dreamed at all. That bothered me more than if she had. I began staying awake longer, pretending to scroll through my phone while watching her chest rise and fall. Every now and then, her breathing would change. Not faster, not slower. Just timed differently, like it was syncing with something else. I didn't tell anyone. Saying it out loud felt like inviting it to listen closer. Sleep stopped being rest. It became observation. I began noticing the space between us before I noticed anything else. Maribel no longer drifted toward me in the night. She stayed centered on her side of the bed, spine straight, hands folded loosely on her stomach, as if she were practicing stillness. One night, I felt the mattress shift, not from her movement, but away from it. The bedding slid slowly, inch by inch, until her side of the bed was bare. She hadn't moved. Her breathing hadn't changed. I pulled the covers back up, careful not to wake her. Minutes later, the fabric slipped again. That was the first time fear felt practical, measured, quiet. I started counting seconds between movements. There was no rhythm, no pattern, just intent. Maribel didn't wake. She didn't react. It felt like the bed was making room for something else. The next night, I made a choice. I wasn't going to sleep. I turned off the lights and lay beside Maribel, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe. Every sound felt amplified. The faint creak of wood, the distant hum of electricity, the whisper of air through vents. Hours passed. Nothing happened. Just as my resolve weakened, I felt her hand twitch. I gently reached for it, wanting reassurance more than control. Her skin was cool, too cool. The moment my fingers closed around hers, she reacted. Not by pulling away, by shoving me. The force was sudden and violent. I stumbled backward, barely catching myself before hitting the dresser. She sat up in one smooth motion, head tilting slightly. Posture wrong in a way my mind struggled to process. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me. Maribel rose to her feet. Except she didn't step down. She stood where she was, balanced on the mattress, body unnaturally steady. Her movements were deliberate, economical, like someone who understood balance too well. Her gaze remained unfocused, eyes open but empty of recognition. When she spoke, the sound didn't match the shape of her mouth. It wasn't shouting, wasn't whispering. It was certainty. The voice told me to leave, not angrily, not threateningly, like stating a rule that had always existed. It said the space belonged elsewhere now. It said the child mattered. I didn't wait for more. I backed out of the room, closed the door, and sat on the living room floor with my back against the wall. I stayed there, staring at nothing, trying not to imagine what stood behind that door when she wasn't speaking. Morning erased everything. Maribel greeted me with a smile, asked why I looked exhausted, commented on the weather. She moved normally. She laughed easily. She remembered nothing. I watched her closely as she ate breakfast, looking for cracks. There were none. When I mentioned the night, her expression shifted, not to fear, but confusion. Genuine confusion. She insisted she had slept deeply. That's when I understood something essential. Whatever had spoken to me did not require her awareness. It didn't need permission. The house felt smaller in daylight. The open lot behind us looked harmless, ordinary. But I knew better now. The danger wasn't in the dark. It was in how easily the light convinced you everything was fine. I told her family. I described everything carefully, leaving out panic, focusing on facts. They listened with concern, nodded at appropriate moments, suggested stress and anxiety without saying the words directly. No one accused me of lying. That was worse. They told me Maribel needed calm, stability, that pregnancy affected perception. I agreed outwardly. I needed them to stay. But inside, I felt isolated in a way I had never experienced before. Fear shared becomes lighter. Fear dismissed becomes heavier. That night, as we sat together in the living room, Maribel went quiet again. Her attention drifted toward the hallway leading to our bedroom. She stared as if someone had just arrived late. No one followed her gaze. I did. I needed certainty, not comfort. Something simple. Something undeniable. That night, after Maribel fell asleep, I placed a small household item beneath her pillow. Nothing symbolic, nothing protective. Just an object that had no reason to move on its own. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even tell myself why I was doing it. I lay awake beside her, listening. The house felt alert, like it was waiting for a cue. Maribel's breathing stayed slow, measured, controlled in a way that felt practiced. At some point, the air changed. Not colder, not warmer, thicker. Her head shifted slightly. The mattress dipped. I didn't look at the pillow. I was afraid that if I acknowledged what was happening, it would acknowledge me back. Morning came. The object was gone. Not displaced. Not fallen. Gone. That night, she spoke again. Her body remained still, but her lips moved as if responding to a conversation already in progress. The voice that emerged wasn't aggressive. It didn't need to be. It told me interference had consequences, not as a threat, as a statement of fact. It said the space had been noticed. That attention invited response, that what grew there wasn't finished. I felt watched, not from a corner, not from the doorway, but from within the room itself, like the walls had shifted closer without moving. I didn't speak. I didn't breathe loudly. The voice paused, as if waiting for a reply I refused to give. When Maribel finally lay still again, the room felt emptied out, drained rather than relieved. I knew then that whatever had attached itself wasn't improvising. It was following rules. Her family came the next day. They filled the house with conversation, laughter, movement, the kind of noise that convinces you nothing bad can survive it. Maribel appeared completely normal, engaged, affectionate, present. Too present. I watched her closely, the way she listened, the way she paused before responding, as if confirming something silently. As evening settled, the energy changed. The house grew quieter despite the number of people inside it. Maribel's attention drifted again toward the bedroom, her eyes fixed on the doorway, not the door itself, the space just inside it. I felt the same pressure I had felt before, like a held breath waiting to be released. No one else seemed to notice. That frightened me more than if they had screamed. Maribel stopped responding. Her eyes remained open, focused on something invisible. Her breathing slowed until it barely registered. When her mother called her name, she didn't react. Seconds stretched. Then her lips began to move. The sound that came out was quiet, almost respectful. Not meant for us. I felt it again. That sense of being evaluated, measured, like something was deciding whether I was still necessary. The room felt crowded without anyone moving closer. Maribel's gaze shifted slightly, following something crossing the room that only she could see. Her posture straightened, rigid, attentive. This wasn't possession as people imagine it. There was no chaos. There was control. When her focus finally broke, she blinked, confused, and asked why everyone was staring at her. No one answered immediately. That night, we agreed on one thing. We couldn't stay. No explanations were offered. None were needed. The house no longer felt neutral. It felt aware. We packed quietly, avoided the back windows. No one mentioned the open lot or the abandoned property beyond it. Maribel seemed lighter, as if distance itself relieved pressure she didn't remember feeling. As we drove away, I looked back once. The land behind the house looked unchanged, empty, harmless. But I knew better. Places don't need to move to follow you. Weeks turned into months. Maribel improved. Her sleep deepened. Her laughter returned. The tension drained from her shoulders. Our child was born healthy. Life reassembled itself around us. I told myself we were safe because distance mattered. Because whatever existed was tied to that place. I wanted to believe it. Sometimes, Maribel spoke in her sleep again. Just a word. Never a sentence. A direction. She never remembered saying it. I stopped waking her. Some questions don't want answers. Months later, I heard the abandoned property had been demolished. The tree removed. The land cleared. People said it looked better. Cleaner. I felt no relief. Removing a marker doesn't erase what noticed it. I understand now what I didn't then. It wasn't attached to Maribel. It was attached to interruption. We crossed a boundary without knowing it existed. We acknowledged a place that preferred to remain unnoticed. Attention is invitation. I don't share this to scare you. I share it because some places don't announce themselves. They wait. And if you ever feel something brush past you, so lightly you almost ignore it, don't assume it passed. It may have only adjusted, and it may still be learning where you live. If you want more real, slow-burn psychological horror stories like this, subscribe, like, share, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now?